Greetings. So this video is about Gayatri Mantras. So let's explore what Gayatri Mantras are, how they work, and how they're applied. So the very first Gayatri Mantra occurs in the Rig Veda, and so that makes it one of the oldest prayers on earth that is still being used. In fact, very probably the oldest prayer or mantra on earth that's still being used. Because this mantra, the Savitri Gayatri, which many of you know, begins Om Bhurbhuvaha Swaha Tat Savitur Varenyam. This mantra occurs in the third mandala, or the third book of the Rig Veda. And that's one of the older books, so that means it could be as old as 1800 BC, so nearly 4,000 years old, and it has been in continuous usage for that entire time. However, prior to the 20th century, this Rigvedic Gayatri, the Savitri Gayatri, was only to be uttered by upper caste men. And in fact, it was only to be heard, let alone spoken, by upper caste men. So this was part of the patriarchal, if you will, Brahminical or Vedic religion. So women and Shudras and untouchables were not allowed to hear or repeat this mantra. In the 20th century, that all changed and it became universalized. And interestingly, nowadays, it's utilized almost definitely by more women than men in modern India, since there's been a sort of cultural turnaround whereby now in modern India, often it's the women or the matriarch of the household who is responsible for doing the worship that brings good luck to the whole family, whereas before it was the patriarch. So this Rigvedic Gayatri Mantra then does have, I'm afraid, a patriarchal history, but it is being reclaimed by women and others. So, there's no, whatever mantra you feel a connection to, regardless of its history, go ahead and work with that mantra. Although, of course, traditionally, you want to work with a mantra that you receive from a teacher. But if you don't have that sort of a teacher, then it's fine to just explore on your own as well. And indeed, mantras are all over the place these days, all over the music services and everywhere. And indeed, in modern India, you'll hear this Rigvedic Gayatri being played from loudspeakers in a, like a Disney pop tune melody. So a lot has changed, because that would be utterly shocking, even just 100 years ago, because it was closely held. But anyway, enough about the history of it. The Rigvedic Gayatri, again, it's called Savitri Gayatri, is found in Rigveda 3.62.10, and the mantra itself, the original mantra itself, begins with Tat Savitur, so then it has some power syllables prefixed to it, which are Om, Bhur, Bhuvaha, Swaha, where Om is the original Bija mantra, and Bhur means earth, and Bhuvaha, atmosphere, and Swaha, heavens. So invoking the three sort of levels of existence. And then the mantra, well, why is it called Gayatri, first of all? It comes from a root Gay, meaning to sing. But a Gayatri mantra, technically, it has 3 lines of 8 syllables each. That's what makes it a Gayatri mantra, that it's in a specific meter. 3 lines of 8 syllables each. So, Tat Savitur Varenyam. There's this A sound, Varenyam, is prolated. That means it's given extra time, it's given an extra beat. And if you don't do that, then you don't have 8 syllables. So actually, from a Vedic point of view especially, it's incorrect to repeat it without giving it its proper length. So, tat saviturvarenyam, right? So that ain sound gets extra length. And that's what's called prolated. It's rare in Sanskrit, but this is one example of it. So that mantra goes, Om Bhur Bhuvah Swaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. And another interesting point of pronunciation is that the na, N-A-H, in proper Vedic Sanskrit is actually pronounced naf. It's very similar to an F sound, except not using your teeth. You're only using your lips. So in linguistics, that's called a bilabial fricative. You can use that phrase at cocktail parties to sound incredibly geeky. Bilabial fricative, nuf, right? And it's easy to pronounce actually because it flows right into the following consonant, because the following consonant is a P. So naf prachodayat. But it shouldn't be obvious. It should be fairly subtle. But it is quite a different sound from na, N-A-H. It is spelled with an H, but in Vedic, in this context, it's pronounced naf. And you'll notice that there's hundreds of versions of the Gayatri Mantra out there by Western and Indian artists, and almost nobody is pronouncing it correctly according to the rules of Vedic Sanskrit. So how do we know? Well, actually, any properly trained Brahmin priest in India does know this and does pronounce it this way. Well, whether they know it in the sense of being able to talk about it, they may not, but they do pronounce it this way. So that's just an interesting geek point. And I just now, when I recited it, I went very fast because that indeed is the tradition. Vedic mantras are recited rapidly, and it doesn't mean they have to be. Obviously, there's, again, hundreds of recordings of this out there now that are all soft and mellifluous and flowy and everything, and that's totally fine. Well, I guess it depends on who you ask. It's totally fine with me. But some more conservative people feel uncomfortable with some of these recordings. But anyway, so this is not just Western kirtan artists who are recording the mantra in pop melodies. It happens in India as well. Okay, so I don't want to get deep into the meaning because I want to focus instead on Tantric Gayatri Mantras and Bhakti Gayatri Mantras. So I don't want to break down all the words of that Rig Vedic Gayatri right now. But briefly, it means, may we meditate on the effulgence, the brilliance, the radiance of the deity called the vivifier, which means the deity of the rising and setting sun. Literally, Savitur means the vivifier or rejuvenator or enlivener. So may we meditate on the effulgent radiance, the beautiful effulgent radiance of that deity called the rejuvenator. And again, this specifically means the rising and setting sun, the deity of the rising and setting sun. And may that deity inspire our thoughts, our meditations, our prayers, and impel us forward on our path. Okay, so that's the meaning. Now, two of the verbs in this Rig Vedic Gayatri Mantra cross over into the Tantric and Bhakti Gayatri Mantras. And those are Dhimahi and Prachodayat. So what I want to do right now is explore something super important, which is that there are dozens and dozens of Gayatri Mantras, one for each major deity. Now, not for all the deities, for complex historical reasons, but for almost all the major deities, there's a Gayatri Mantra. But what's interesting is the model for these dozens of Gayatri mantras which are out there is not the Rig Vedic Gayatri. The model, in fact, is this Shiva Gayatri Mantra, specifically the Rudra Gayatri. So this is the second oldest Gayatri Mantra. It's 2,000 or 3,000 years old, depending on what school of thought you're going with. And that's Tat Purushaya Vidmahe Mahadevaya Dhimahi Tanno Rudra Prachodayat. Now, I'll type it in the chat window also, but the key here is that all the other Gayatris are modeled on this Rudra Gayatri, not the Vedic Gayatri. And that's something that's not well understood or appreciated in the modern yoga world and in the modern world of Hinduism either. So let's break down this prototypical Gayatri mantra. It goes Tat Purushaya. Oopsie. First line, Tat Purushaya Vidmahe. Notice 8 syllables. Again, if it doesn't have 8 syllables, it's incorrect. And indeed, you might find on the internet, you will find Gayatri mantras that don't have the right number of syllables. And that's a dosha, that's a problem for the mantra. So we'll come back to that later. Okay. So, first line, Tat Purushaya Vidmahe, 8 syllables. Now, in every Gayatri mantra, except the Vedic one, you have Vidmahe at the end of the first line, the verb, may we know, or just we know. So what's the meaning of this line? And this, by the way, this mantra is commonly mistranslated. And why is it commonly mistranslated? Well, interestingly, it doesn't have proper Sanskrit grammar. Now, why? Well, it's very possible that this, like some other very early Shiva and Tantric mantras, originated from areas outside the sort of Brahminical heartland where super proper Sanskrit grammar was emphasized. It may have originated from more marginal regions, that in which Sanskrit was used more loosely. And interestingly, the tradition, instead of being embarrassed about ungrammatical mantras, by the way, the rules of meter are broken much less often than the rules of grammar. So you do need 8 syllables, but in terms of the grammar of the Sanskrit, it can be ungrammatical sometimes. And the tradition, instead of being embarrassed by it, actually argued that this was God God exemplifying his freedom by breaking the conventional rules of grammar. What do I mean here? Well, mantras are thought to be revealed. They're divinely revealed. They're not composed by humans. That's the belief. And so they come straight from the divine in whichever aspect, God, goddess. And so the idea about these grammatical solecisms, or mistakes, you might say, is that they're not mistakes, that they actually are God consciously choosing to demonstrate his radical freedom by breaking the conventional rules of grammar. And this is called Aisha. Aisha Sanskrit, meaning coming from Isha, the Lord. So just an interesting note about that. I thought this video was going to be short. Clearly, it's not going to be that short. Okay. What does the first line mean? Tat Purushaya Vidmahe. And I'll come to questions in a moment if there are questions in the chat window. So Tat Purushaya Vidmahe means, and again, this is commonly mistranslated on the internet and in yoga world, if people know the mantra at all. It means we know this, meaning deity or divinity, to realize Purusha. And here, the last word is the word that's going to be different in each Gayatri mantra. Okay, so Tat and Vidmahe mean we know this to realize, and then it says Purushaya Purusha, for the sake of Purusha, to realize Purusha. What is Purusha? Pure consciousness, right? As established early on by Sankhya philosophy. Purusha, in other contexts, means person, but in spiritual context, means pure consciousness. Okay, so we know this, or we focus on this divinity or deity, or divine form, in this case Rudra, in order to realize pure consciousness. That's what the first line means. Tat Purushaya Vidmahe. Okay. Second line, 8 syllables once again, right? That's what makes it a Gayatri. Mahadevaya Dhimahi. Okay. Now, again, in the verb is the same in every Gayatri Mantra. You're going to get Dhimahi at the end of the second line in every Gayatri Mantra. So here we have Mahadeva. And the meaning of this, let me paste that in. Again, commonly mistranslated. And how do I know the right translation where most people get it wrong? Simple. It's not because I'm so smart. It's because I did my homework and I looked up the oldest commentary on this mantra, which comes from the year 450, and in which it's explained in exactly this way. That's Kaundinya's commentary. So the meaning of Mahadevaya Dhimahi is, may we meditate for Mahadeva, for the sake of the great divinity. Meaning, may we offer our practice up to the divine in the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita, which was composed around the same time as this very mantra, probably. Mahadevaya Dhimahi, may we meditate for the great divinity. May we offer our meditation up to God. Okay, and also, though, this dative case, Mahadevaya, can also mean in order to realize. May we meditate in order to realize the great divinity, in order to attain that great divinity. Both meanings are present. So again, with any Gayatri, you're going to fill in the blank. May we meditate for or to attain blank, whichever word is going there, right? Because I'll explain more later. Okay, so now what's the third line of the Rudra Gayatri, which again is the model for all other Gayatris besides the Vedic one? The third line is Tanno Rudra Prachodayat. Again, 8 syllables. Doesn't have 8 syllables in 3 lines. It's not a Gayatri mantra. Or something's missing. So third line, Tanno Rudra Prachodayat. And there, Rudra is the word that is different in each Gayatri mantra because each Gayatri mantra evokes a different deity. Okay, so you're going to see Tanno blank Prachodayat or Tanna blank Prachodayat because of the grammar. So what does that line mean? It means simply, may Rudra, or whichever deity we're talking about, in this case Rudra, may Rudra impel us to that. May Rudra impel us to that. Tanno Rudra Prachodayat. Impel us to what? Well, that's ambiguous. It depends on what commentary, what commentator, what lineage. Kaundinya, the oldest commentator on this mantra, says the power of knowing and acting. Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti is what that refers to. May Rudra impel us to access and fully embody our power of knowing and acting. Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti. But anyway, that's again open to interpretation. What is the that? Is it enlightenment? Is it the absolute? Is it liberation? The nice thing is, the teacher, the guru, can just explain it whichever way she or he wants, that becomes the correct interpretation in that lineage. Okay, so Tanno Rudra Prachodayat. If you're pronouncing it Vedic style, then again the H at the end of Rudra becomes an F sound only if you're doing it Vedic style, which in this mantra you don't need to do. But if you were reciting this mantra in a Vedic context, it would be Tanno Rudra Prachodayat. Rudra. It's like an F. But in another context, you don't. You just, tantric context, let's say you say, Tanno Rudra Prachodayat. Okay. So, Prachodayat, may he or she impel, no means us, to that ton. Okay. So this is then the format of the Gayatri Mantra. Now I'll show you how it transposes into other versions of itself, okay? So in the first line, we have Vidmahe at the end in all these medieval Gayatri mantras, right? So that means we have 5 syllables before that. So XXXXX, Vidmahe, that's the first line in any Gayatri, where the X is filled in by usually the name of that deity, right? So if it's Ganesh, if we're doing Ganesh Gayatri or Ganapati Gayatri, then it's Eka Dantaya Vidmahe. May we know that deity with a single tusk, meaning Ganesh. And then the second line, again, we have Dhimahi at the end in all the Gayatris, and so we have 5 syllables before that. XXXXX, Dhimahi. May we meditate for the sake of that deity. So again, if it's the Ganesh Gayatri, right, here we do Vakratundaya Dhimahi, the one with a curved trunk. May we meditate for the sake of that one with a curved trunk, or to attain that one with a curved trunk. It's just a name of Ganesh. So you have epithets. All the deities have epithets, meaning different names that have different numbers of syllables so that they can fit in the meter of a given mantra. Okay, so that's the second line in all these Gayatris other than the Vedic one. And then the third line goes Tanno, or sometimes Tanna, XX Prachodayat. And there you put the name of the deity. Okay? So in the case of Ganesh, well, you need a 2-syllable name of Ganesh to fit the meter. So it's Danti, Tanno Danti Prachodayat. The toothed one, that's a name of Ganesh, or the tusked one, actually. So Ganesh Gayatri, I haven't actually sung them. So let me sing. I'll sing the Ganesh Gayatri because I was just talking about it. Om Ekadantaya Vidmahe Vakratundaya Dhimahi Tanno Danti Prachodayat. So why is there this little th at the end when you already have 8 syllables? Who knows, but it is tradition, and that tradition goes back centuries, if not millennia. So we follow, the lineage is important, and so we follow how it's been handed down to us. That's called the principle of Aagama, how it's been handed down. So even though in the text it says Prachodayat, in lineage, it's Prachodayat. So that's one way to know, actually. If somebody's received the mantra through lineage, then they'll do it that way. It's usually going to be true. Okay, so then the Rudra Gayatri, which we did before. Om Tat Purushaya Vidmahe Mahadevaya Dhimahi Tanno Rudra Prachodayat. And again, there is a different Gayatri for each deity. And the cool thing is then the Gayatri Mantra is like a form into which any content can be poured, any deity. And so then Amena asks the logical question, can we make up our own? Yes and no. If a Gayatri mantra actually spontaneously comes to you in meditation, then that is considered valid, at least for your own practice, maybe not to give to others. But in terms of sitting down and figuring one out with your brain, sure, you can do that as a fun hobby, but it's not technically a mantra if it comes from your intellect, right? It has to come from deeper. But you could practice putting it in that form, you know? And then maybe if you actually contemplate Gayatri enough, Gayatri mantras in all their forms, then maybe one will come to you, who knows? Okay, so almost time for questions. You notice though that I was putting Om as a bija. That does not count in the 8 syllables, right? It's Om, then the meter starts. Tat Purushaya Vidmahe, Mahadevaya Dhimahi, Tanno Rudra Prachodayat. So there's about 4 dozen Gayatris in total, maybe 5 dozen. So most of the major deities. I don't know exactly which deities don't have one and which do. I haven't made it a comprehensive study. Okay, so if the point is, if you are working with a specific deity, meaning to say, at this phase in your life, what energy are you inviting more of? That's the deity that you're calling on, whether you're doing a formal sadhana or not. You don't need to be doing a formal sadhana necessarily. But if you're inviting in more of an experience of abundance, then you're inviting in Lakshmi. If you're beginning a new endeavor or project, you invite in Ganesh. If you're inviting in spaciousness, openness, and groundedness, you're inviting in Shiva. If you're inviting in love and playfulness and eroticism, then you're inviting in Krishna Gopala. If you're inviting in eloquence and creativity in writing and music, you're inviting in Saraswati, and so on and so forth, okay? So it's good to know the primary qualities of all these deities. So if you want to invite something in your life, then you sing the Gayatri mantra of that deity. And you can, each deity has, of course, multiple mantras, but at least it's again easy, relatively easy to look up these Gayatris on the internet. And again, some of them will be wrong because it's the internet. So now you have some rules that you know. It's okay. It should be 8 syllables times 3 lines, and the verb at the end of the 3 lines has to be Vidmahe Dhimahi Prachodayat. Okay. May we know that. May we meditate for the sake of that or to attain that, and may that one, whichever deity, impel us forward on our path. Prachodayat. May that one impel us forward on our path. Okay. Now, are there questions? Hopefully everything's clear. Someone was asking, what is the Ram Gayatri? I do have that somewhere here. Where is it? Yeah, it's Dasharathaya Vidmahe, Sitanathaya Dhimahi, Ramachandra Prachodayat. Okay, I'm not sure about that 3rd line. Yeah, I'll have to look it up because I was doing it from memory, because what I was looking at just now was simply the translation. Yeah, I'll have to look that one up. Okay, I'm going to go back and see what other questions there are, and then we got to wrap this up because it's already long. I like how many people typed bilabial fricative with geeky excitement. Okay, not seeing that many questions. Okay, so you know what we'll do, because we've got to wrap it up. Let's start a thread in the group where we can post Gayatri mantras of different deities in the Tantric Yoga Now Facebook group. So I guess that's it for now. Let's finish with chanting some Gayatri mantra. Oh, I wanted to give you one more. Jess, I don't have the Kali one memorized, but we'll look it up. So one more, which is the Shiva Gayatri. That's an important one. So that one goes Tanmahe Shaya Vidmahe. The typing I know is probably loud for you guys. Then second line, Vag Vishuddhaya Dhimahi. Okay, so may we know, the first line is may we know that to attain the great divinity. And the second line is, may we meditate for the sake of purifying our speech, our words, making them aligned with truth. Vag Vishuddhaya Dhimahi. And then the third line, Tanna Shiva Prachodayat. Okay, so this is a Tantric Gayatri, and it's a Shiva one. Om Tanmaheshaya Vidmahe Vagvishuddhaya Dhimahi Tanna Shiva Prachodayata. So let's do all the Gayatris that we've gone over in a row. Om Bhurभुvः Swah Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nः Prachodayat. Om Tat Purushaya Vidmahe Mahadevaya Dhimahi Tanno Rudra Prachodayat. Om Ekadantaya Vidmahe Vakratundaya Dhimahi Tanno Danti Prachodayat. Om Tanmaheshaya Vidmahe Vagvishuddhaya Dhimahi Tanna Shiva Prachodayat. Om. Happy Mahashivaratri, everyone. Om.